رمضان يا رمضان رمضان يا رمضان رمضان يا رمضان رمضان يا رمضان.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to In the Light of the Quran. Tonight we do an overview of the recitation for the 14th night of Ramadan. Surah Al-Anbiya reminds us of the fact that though believers are one brotherhood, humanity is one large family. We are the progeny of Adam. And that family has had the honor and the privilege of the guidance of the divine through the agency of prophets. And these prophets, who were models of excellence, came throughout history to guide humankind to what is best, to guide humankind to good social relations, to good character, to ideal faith, and the possibility of eternal goodness in the hereafter. These prophets, who came throughout history, endured tremendous amount of difficulties. They overcame exorbitant challenges and had to pass through distress and affliction. Their opponents did their best to stop their mission, but in spite of all the machinations of the enemies and of the disbelievers and the opponents and the detractors, the prophets were indeed successful in conveying the message of the divine. Surah Al-Anbiya brings to light the trials and tribulations of numerous prophets, but more importantly, how they endured these trials and tribulations with great honor and tremendous amount of dignity. They underwent these difficulties without ever losing faith, nor ever giving up hope. And therefore, the stories of prophets mentioned in the Quran are not only guidelines, they're also historical documents of what happened in the past, but they also serve as a motivation that even in the darkest times there is hope. And even in difficulty, ease will follow, provided we do what is best. Surah Hajj, or the pilgrimage, is the 22nd chapter in the chronological order of the Quran. And the first part of this surah, Surah Hajj, or the pilgrimage, was revealed in the last stages of the Meccan period. In other words, it was revealed a little before the Prophet's migration. And the rest of the chapter was revealed during the first stage of his stay in Medina. And therefore we can see that the first portion is part of the Meccan surah, of the Meccan stage, and the latter part of the surah, or the last 2/3, are of the Medinan stage. This surah addresses by and large three categories of people. One, the mushriks of Mecca, the polytheists of Mecca at the time of the Prophet, and the guidelines we get from how opposition may be to people of faith and how to deal with that and respond to that. Secondly, the wavering Muslims, those who are not sure about their faith, those who, when they are tested, they may buckle under pressure. And thirdly, those who are true believers, true in faith. As for the mushrikeen, or those polytheists at the time of the Prophet in Mecca, they are informed that they only harm themselves by rejecting the Prophet and by persecuting the divinely appointed guides, who are in fact the best elements of their community. Abraham came to them, Ismail came to them, Muhammad came to them, peace be upon all of them. Denying these models of excellence is denying themselves the opportunity to benefit from divine guidance and from that method of living which is the best way of life. The second category of people addressed by and large in this chapter are the wavering Muslims. Those who, though they had embraced Islam, were not prepared to endure any hardship in its way, and they have been admonished to the effect that the question basically is, what is this faith of yours? On the one hand, you are ready to believe in Allah and to obey Him, provided you are given peace and prosperity. But on the other hand, if you meet with affliction and hardship in His way, you discard your Creator and cease to remain loyal as believers. In other words, the wavering Muslims of that time and people of faith throughout history are reminded that being principled is part of the testimony of faith. Because faith is not by mere proclamation. ليس الإيمان بالتمنى ولكن ما وقر في القلب وصدقه العمل. It's not only, as the scholars say, by profession of the tongue or by saying what you desire, but also by profession of the tongue and by manifesting that belief in practical action. In other words, it becomes manifest in your behavior and in your day-to-day life. Not only saying you believe, but also doing what a believer ought to do. Being principled by what we sincerely allege that we believe. In other words, we proclaim the Shahada, live by it. Don't only talk the talk, but also have the courage to walk the walk. As regards the third category dealt with here, the true believers. And they have been addressed here in two ways. One, in a general way, and more specifically including the common people of Arabia at that time, and also in an exclusive way. In an inclusive way for the people of Arabia at that time and general believers, the believers have been told that those mushriks of Makkah had no right to debar them from visiting the holy mosque or to prevent them from performing pilgrimage. And in order to emphasize the point, the history of the construction of the holy mosque has been cited. It was built and rebuilt by Ibrahim and Ismail, and it is a place meant for the worship of the divine, a place built by Prophet Abraham, and it was built by the command of Allah. And therefore, those who follow the way of Abraham have most right to worship at that Kaaba. As regards the believers in an exclusive way, there is an injunction to take up jihad in a physical sense, in other words, qital. As we know, there are two dimensions to jihad. Jihad in general is striving for what is right, for what is just, for what is true, for one's faith, for the oppressed. That is jihad in general. But when it incorporates taking up arms to do that, it's referred to as qital. And here we find the first verse in the Quran, the first time permission is given to take up arms. أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ. Permission now is given. Don't forget, in previous Meccan revelations, there was jihad was mentioned. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. And those who strive in our way will guide them. Those who strive in our path will guide them to our ways. Man jahada fa innama yujahidu li nafsi. Whoever makes jihad or strives or struggles for his own improvement. But in this case, it speaks about qital, taking up arms, but very important to understand. This is the first verse which gave Muslims permission to pick up arms. And it guides Muslims throughout history. Because this verse sometimes is abused to take up arms by some Muslims against anyone, anywhere whom they differ with. And specifically as if we have permission to kill those who are not of our faith. The verse says, permission to fight has now been given to you because you have been wrong, because you have been oppressed, because you have been driven from your faith, driven from your homes because of your faith. And then it says, وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَهُدِّمَتْ صَوَامِعُ وَبِيَعُ وَصَلَوَاتٍ وَمَسَاجِدُ يُذْكَرُ فِيهَا اسْمُ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا وَلَيَنْصُرَنَّ اللَّهَ مَنْ يَنْصُرُهُ. It's very important to pay attention to this. Permission to give up arms is given to you now that you've been oppressed and driven from your homes because of your faith. And then the verse goes on later to say, if it were not for some sane-minded people who stand up for justice, churches, synagogues, monasteries and mosques where the name of the Creator is remembered, would have been destroyed. Believers are given instructions to adopt the right and just attitude when in power, and to rule justly in the land when they do come to power. Believers have thus been instructed: establish salah, which is the pursuance of spiritual and moral welfare; pay the zakah, which is the pursuance of economic and social welfare; perform jihad for the manifesting of justice and truth. All this in order to manifest the best models for a righteous life. Then we have Surah Al-Mu'minun. In Surah Al-Mu'minun, both in style and its theme, this was also a Meccan revelation. And this was revealed prior to Surah Hajj. Of course, as we mentioned, Surah Hajj, the first portion was revealed in Mecca, the latter portion in Medina. Surah Al-Mu'minun was revealed in the middle portion of the Prophet's mission in Mecca, when bitter conflict had begun between the Prophet and the disbelievers of Mecca who were trying to exterminate the believers. And it was sent down, it seems, during the climax of the famine in Mecca, which according to authentic traditions occurred during the middle stage of the prophetic period in Mecca. In other words, about 4 or 5 years before migration to Medina. The central theme of this surah is to invite people to accept and follow the message of truth. It begins with a description of the characteristic of true believers, those who are humble, who establish prayer, who avoid nonsensical discussion and gossip, and those who guard their chastity, those who fulfill prayer, those who see to the needs of the needy. Then there is reference to the process of embryonic development of the fetus. And all the prophets brought one and the same religion from Allah, and they all belong to one and the same community. And after relating the stories of the prophets, a fundamental principle has been enunciated. Wealth and prosperity in worldly life is not a criterion of real success in the sight of Allah. Likewise, adversity of people is not proof that Allah is displeased with them. Life is a test. Pass the test of life by doing what is best. Shukran. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
رمضان يا رمضان رمضان يا رمضان رمضان